Here's 6 urban legends from each state. The stain on Colonel Jonathan Buck's tomb. The tomb of Colonel Jonathan Buck in Bucksport bears a mysterious leg-shaped stain. The story goes that Buck sentenced a woman to burn for witchcraft, and while she was burning, her leg rolled out of the fire. It's also been said that the witch cursed Buck's tomb to always bear a stain for this injustice. People have tried to get rid of this stain twice, but the stain keeps reappearing. Chessie, the Chesapeake Bay monster. Chessie sightings have been around since the 1930s, but really started to pick up steam in the 1980s, when photographic evidence became more readily available. Chessie is said to resemble a snake, measure around 30 feet long, and is the approximate thickness of a telephone pole. While there haven't been any recorded attacks from Chessie, a 30-foot long snake does not sound like something most people would want to run into. The spirits of Hoosac Tunnel. In the 24-year-long construction of the Hoosac Tunnel in western Massachusetts, approximately 200 men died. Death was so associated with the tunnel that it was actually nicknamed the Bloody Pit. After a rather gruesome explosion in either 1867 or 1868, 13 miners were trapped inside the tunnel. The other workers assumed that the miners had died, but eventually it was discovered the miners had lived, had built a raft to combat flooding, but eventually died due to poisonous gas inhalation. It is said that these 13 miners haunted the tunnel for years, moaning and briefly appearing as ghosts. The little girl on Knock Knock Road. The legend began back in the 1940s when a story went around that a little girl was killed by a careless driver. Some say she was riding her bike in the street, others say she was walking home from school. But now her ghost stalks drivers who come down that road, appearing to drivers at their car window, knocking, searching for the driver who killed her. To this day, those who are familiar with this story drive down Starsburg Road in the Detroit area at all hours of the night, hoping the little girl will come knocking at their car window. The Kensington Runestone. In 1898, a Swedish-American farmer found a gigantic slab of rock on his farm that had symbols that appeared to be Norse. And since then, no one has figured out where it came from. While we now know that the Vikings were in the Americas long before Christopher Columbus, the Kensington Runestone has long been touted as evidence that the Vikings reached what was to become Minnesota way back in 1362. It is widely debated whether the Norsemen made it as far as Minnesota or not, but the Runestone did not simply appear out of thin air. And if it wasn't the Vikings, who left this mysterious rock, and what does it say? Deer Island's haunted treasure. The ghost of Deer Island originates from an old pirate story. The story says that back in the 1920s, 2 men were fishing on Deer Island when they heard a rustling in the bushes, which they assumed were wild hogs. Eventually, they decided to check it out and encountered a headless skeleton. They ran back to their boat, and the skeleton followed them all the way there. According to the pirate story, there was a ship that sailed into Biloxi Bay and buried their treasure on Deer Island. The crew decided to behead one of their own and left his body behind to guard their treasure. And as always, have a good day.